The Independent Development Trust, IDT, has confirmed the immediate departure of its Chief Executive Officer, Tebogo Malaka. Malaka, who had been on precautionary suspension since August 2025, tendered her resignation effective January 31, 2026, choosing to step down ahead of a scheduled disciplinary hearing. The IDT board accepted the resignation, confirming that Malaka will receive no exit compensation, a move welcomed by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, which oversees the entity. The disciplinary proceedings Malaka sought to avoid were a direct result of an explosive investigation by Daily Maverick. The publication's bribe sting exposé, which sent shockwaves through the public sector, captured Malaka and the IDT's former spokesperson, Phasha Makgolane, allegedly offering a journalist 60,000 rand in cash. The money, reportedly stuffed in a Dior shopping bag, was offered in an attempt to quash the ongoing investigation into the CEO's conduct. So let's take that conversation forward. I'm joined by Itumeleng Sediadia, who is Senior Intelligence Analyst at Fulcrum Analytics. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, Itumeleng. So, Tebogo Malaka is out the door just before she could be disciplined, having been on suspension since August 2025. Where does that leave our quest for answers around particularly the bribery allegations, but also the other allegations that had to do with the relationship with certain service providers at the IDT?
Hi, thank you for having me. I would say that at present there is no publicly confirmed indictment or formal charge that's been laid against her, which suggests that law enforcement is still in the evidence assessment and docket building phase. So the allegations of bribery fall under the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, meaning that SABC and the National Prosecuting Authority would be the primary institutions involved going forward here. The resignation has no legal effect, though, on the criminal exposure. In fact, post-date capture practices have shown that the NPA is proceeding more cautiously to avoid the collapse of high-profile cases due to weak evidence. And this has been highlighted by the annual report that we have received from the Zondo Commission. So on the civil side, recovery remains legally possible under the Public Finance Management Act through mechanisms such as the Special Tribunal, particularly in relation to the failed oxygen plant project. However, South Africa's records have actually shown that recovery is often very slow and uneven unless the Special Investigating Unit is formally mandated and assets are secured early on in the process.
Yeah. And in terms of just resigning before you face charges, disciplinary charges at the institution that employs you, what is the impact of that, and how often do we see figures, particularly public figures, resorting to that?
This happens quite often, and I believe that this case is actually reflective of a very systemic institutional failure rather than just an isolated lapse, So the recurring weaknesses are quite familiar across South Africa's public entities, where there's ineffective board oversight, weak internal compliance systems, and a general culture where reputational risk management substitutes the need and the prevalence of accountability. So the alleged attempt to bribe a journalist is particularly revealing because it suggests that there's an institutional environment where exposure is actually viewed as a threat to be neutralized rather than as a signal to actually call for internal correction. And this is a classic indicator of the governance decay which we're witnessing in our public sector companies. So the immediate reforms must include strengthening consequence management under the Public Finance Management Act, and we should also extend that to independent ethics and risk committees and very frequent forensic lifestyle audits for senior executives that go far greater in exposing the transparency in procurement processes that we need to see now recently. And without these concrete measures, public confidence cannot be meaningfully restored after something this controversial has actually happened.
All right, Itumeleng, thank you for that. Let's leave it there for this afternoon. Itumeleng Sediadia is Senior Intelligence Analyst at Fulcrum Analytics.